The next unit we're going to look at is Informal Assessment. And the extract on your screen now is taken from CAPS English Second Additional Language for Foundation Phase. And it states there that informal practices in the second additional language should be informal and continuous. Most of the assessment should take place through observation, oral responses, and demonstrations. The teacher records the results of the assessment using a checklist. Now this extract we're going to elaborate on in this unit, and we're going to keep coming back to this in future units as well, as it's an important concept when it comes to a second additional language. So before we move on, let's quickly just touch on the differences between formal and informal assessment. Formal assessment is used for overall achievement, for the progression and promotion marks to get a learner to the next grade, while informal assessment is used to monitor and enhance learners' progress. It's not something that is done at the end of introducing a skill. It is continuous and it needs to be done on an ongoing basis so the teacher has an idea of what level the learner is at. Okay, for formal assessment, it is carried out under formal conditions, while for informal assessment, it should be carried out during normal classroom environment where you actually watch the learners learn. They shouldn't even be aware that you are assessing them, and it's just for the teacher to get an idea of where her class is at, and the individual learners. So a good way of summarizing it is that informal observation refers to observing learners as they learn on a continuous and ongoing basis. So why even use informal assessment? It is very useful for a teacher as it provides a lot of information. The first is it helps you identify your strengths and weaknesses of each learner. So by continuously observing and looking and watching your learners learn, you'll be able to tell which learners quickly grasp the skill and are okay to work independently, who needs more support and more of your time and dedication. Secondly, it will provide insight into whether instruction being delivered at the right pace. And this is more information for the teacher to change something that they're doing. Am I explaining or delivering the skill in the right way? If majority of my class is not understanding and are confused, it might not be them, it might be the way that I'm teaching it, and I maybe need to approach the skill in a new way, find a different methodology to introduce the skill to the learners. Thirdly, it will provide insight as to how your learners should be grouped or paired. You don't want all your lessons with the teacher in the front and the class sitting and just listening to the teacher. Yes, there will be plenty of whole class activities that will be going on in a second additional language, but you also want some grouped or paired activities for the learners to start working a little bit more independently. And it's a good idea to put some stronger learners who understand or have a better grasp of the skill with some weaker learners. And this is where informal assessment will let you know which learners have grasped the skill and which learners still need a little bit of support. Now we're going to quickly look at how do you devise an informal assessment activity. And the first step that you need to do is you need to decide on a skill that you would like to assess. Secondly, you need to ensure that your skill meets the CAPS criteria. You need to go back to your CAPS document and ensure that the skill that you would like to assess meets the CAPS criteria, and it's a necessary skill. Step 3, you need to ensure that your activity assesses the skill you wish to assess. Sometimes we get quite caught up or carried away in an activity that we've designed, and when implemented, the learners aren't really required to demonstrate the skill for you to observe. So make sure that throughout planning for that activity that you keep the skill in mind and make sure that the learners have ample opportunity to demonstrate that skill for you. And the fourth step is to ensure that you have a checklist to record your learners' performance. As stated in CAPS, there needs to be some sort of checklist which is evidence of your learners' performance of the second additional language in your classroom. So remember, the overall aim is you want to see progression in the learner's performance of the skill. That is what informal assessment is about. You assess along the way so you can improve the way you teach, how the learners are receiving the language, and so that they can develop and become more comfortable within the second additional language.